All right, what's up, Notre Dame fans? I'm Tyler Horka. That is Jack Sobel. We're with Blue and Gold Illustrated, blueandgold.com. We just saw Notre Dame's sixth practice to fall camp. It's crazy. They're already about a week into this thing. We only saw the first 5 periods, so that equates to about, when you add in the stretching period, 40 minutes of practice, 30 to 40 minutes, somewhere in there. So not a whole lot to glean. I mean, we've kind of got the depth chart down at this point, kind of know what everyone's doing at this point in camp, what their trajectory is, what they're projected to be come August 26th. And I say August, it is August now, Jack. Kind of crazy to think that Notre Dame's season opener against Navy is only 25 days away. So here's where the team is kind of at. I thought the starting offensive line, I'll start there, was kind of solidified last week. We saw 3 straight days of practices from Wednesday to Friday. The same 5 guys lined up across the board every single time. Rocco Spindler has entered his name into the chat, if you will. He's getting a lot of first-team reps next to Blake Fisher, who's the right tackle, obviously, at right guard for Rocco Spindler. So it's going to be interesting to monitor where that goes. Andrew Kristofic was even working at right tackle today, so I don't want to use this term, but he's kind of floundering at this point, Andrew Kristofic. Now, look, it's really good to cross-train these guys. If Kristofic can play guard and tackle, then in a pinch, he's a player that Notre Dame can depend on at some point this season. But if you're looking at the guy who's getting most of the first-team reps right now, the last 2 days anyway, it's been Rocco Spindler. So that was the bulk of my practice observations today, was watching the offensive line, seeing where those guys are at. The rest of the offensive line, you know the names: Joe Alt, left tackle; Billy Schrouth, left guard. Zeke Correll, I think, has looked phenomenal. Go to blueandgold.com, look at my observations from practice. He's really standing out as a guy who gets that he's a graduate senior, and he gets that this could be his best year ever in a Notre Dame uniform. He's looked really good. And then on the right side, like I just said, Correll's the center, obviously, and then on the right side, Spindler and Fisher at guard and tackle, respectively. Jack, anything that stood out to you watching the defense today?
Yeah, just a continuation of a couple guys who I think might be primed for pretty big seasons based on what I've seen in the spring. Riley Mills and defensive tackle and Xavier Watts, a safety, have both looked really good in the spring. Mills has put on weight. He is bigger than he's good weight. He's bigger than he was last season, particularly in his lower body. He looks very powerful. His punch, his extension has looked more powerful than the rest of the defensive line. And he looks just as athletic as he was. Last year he made Bruce Feldman's freaks list. Might have been the highest or second highest Notre Dame guy on there. Last year Notre Dame was moving him back and forth between defensive end and 3 technique. Personally, I didn't cover the team last season, but watching some of that film, I think his best position is that 3 technique spot. That is all he's doing right now, and I think he's better off for it. Watts, kind of the same thing, experimented at receiver during fall camp last year. He is obviously all strong safety now. He's going to start at strong safety week 1 or week 0 against Navy. He looks good as well, really smooth, really fluid. Had an interception on the first rep of one-on-ones against Sam Hartman guarding Chris Tyree. Jumped in front of a route last Wednesday. I think he's primed for a big year as well.
Yeah, and then a couple injury things. Kevin Bauman once again did not go through practice as a full participant. He was riding the bike in what they call the pit while the healthy guys were on the field. He was off to the side riding the bike, along with Chance Tucker from the defense, right? That was a continuation of leaving practice a little bit early yesterday. KK Smith, the freshman wide receiver, you're going to see him in the pit throughout the entirety of fall camp. He had shoulder surgery this summer. And then Ryan Barnes was wearing a red non-contact jersey. Did he look like he was going through the drills fine?
Yeah, he looked fine. I mean, we don't really see much. We saw a little bit of contact at the beginning of practice, but that was kind of before at least I noticed that he was wearing a red jersey, so I didn't really see if he was doing much of that. But the non-contact drills, he looked like he was full go. Wouldn't be too worried about Barnes at this point. Aiden Gobaera was also in the pit. He's definitely behind Nana Asaf-Mensah and Javante Jean-Baptiste. Maybe Tyson Ford at this point as well. He's been this is something we'll get into the press conference. Al Washington and Al Golden, defensive line coach and defensive coordinator, have talked about cross-training Ford both at 3 technique and strong side end. So Gobaera might be behind him as well. Regardless, today he wasn't practicing. Was in a jersey, no helmet in the pit.
A couple other things, what we saw on the field from the offense. Not a whole lot. I thought there was one interesting moment where Sam Hartman threw a really nice pass on the sideline on a corner route to walk-on tight end Andrew Janaszak, who I think actually caught a touchdown in the 2022 blue and gold game. And have to go back and look at that. That's a lot of football I've seen since then, but I think that was a thing. Interesting that Hartman went up to Janaszak after the catch, and they were getting ready to run the lines back the other direction. He went out of his way to give him a high five and say, hey, nice catch along the sideline there. This guy's in his 6th fall camp, Sam Hartman is, and he's still doing those types of things. I tell you, as a former athlete, Jack played football, those things don't go unnoticed by teammates. If you're, Deion Colsey, say a second-string wide receiver right now, and you see that, you're like, man, I want to catch a pass from Sam Hartman now. That this guy's a good dude to play with. So thought that was an interesting thing. And then there were a lot of trip formations that I saw today. I think that was kind of the emphasis yesterday and the days before were man coverage, then zone coverage. Today was, okay, what can we do with the trips formation? I think the slot receiver ran a drag across the middle. The field receiver ran a little short hitch where he just kind of planted in the middle of the field. And then the boundary receiver ran a corner. So I think that's a set you're going to see a lot if you're watching the Notre Dame passing attack this fall. And then from a running back standpoint, I think the one thing that we can say about those guys is that they're all really healthy, and every single day you show up, you have 5 scholarship running backs. Jadarian Price, the sophomore, coming off an Achilles injury, among those who looks really good. So Audric Estime, Jeremiah Love, Jabron Payne, and Devin Ford, the Penn State transfer. Really good-looking group. Obviously, the numbers, the experience might not be there. The only way to get that, though, is to go out there and do it this fall, and I think that's what they're going to do. Really quickly, a couple minutes here on the press conference. I thought the Vipers were very impressive. A lot of solid heads on those guys' shoulders. Jordan Botello, Junior Tui Halamaka, Joshua Burnham. A couple of those guys, all of those guys have played different positions in their Notre Dame careers, but they look very locked in. They know what they're doing at the Viper position. Second year in the same defense under Al Golden. I think those guys are going to be very impressive. Jack, 30 to 45 seconds press conference. What do you take away from that today?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time with Jason Anye and Gabriel Rubio, the second-team DTs. Rubio said he's primarily working at that nose tackle spot. Anye primarily at that 3 technique spot, but they're very much interchangeable. They could play either position. And Washington really likes those guys. Washington, said they need a nickname for their kind of duo. He suggested the Bash Brothers. And they're going to play a lot this year, and I think they've looked pretty good so far in camp. We'll have a story about that this afternoon on blueandgold.com.
Anybody that's watched the Mighty Ducks series, the Disney movies, hockey movies back in the day, would love the Bash Brothers reference. So props to Al Washington on that one. He's got a bunch of solid-looking guys in that Notre Dame defensive line unit. Next time we'll be at camp is actually Saturday, so we've got a few days off here from actually viewing camp. Plenty of stories from what we've seen this week and even last week going up on blueandgold.com to get you through to Saturday when we'll be talking to the Notre Dame quarterbacks. So be locked in to hear from Gino Goduli, the quarterbacks coach, and then obviously Sam Hartman, Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie. Those guys will be talking to the media on Saturday. Until then, keep it here on this YouTube channel and go to blueandgold.com for all of your Notre Dame fall camp coverage.